In the humid, salt-thickened air over the Solomon Islands in early 1943, the veteran pilots of the Imperial Japanese Navy felt an almost divine sense of invincibility as they climbed into the cockpits of their Mitsubishi A6M Zeros, aircraft that had spent the last year and a half dancing circles around every Allied fighter that dared to challenge them. These men were the elite of the elite, the eagles who had scorched the skies over Pearl Harbor and Darwin, and to them, the American industrial machine seemed capable of producing only clumsy, overweight ironworks that burned easily and turned like sluggish whales in the vast blue expanse of the Pacific. When the first reports filtered back about a new American fighter, a slab-sided, Grumman-built beast with a gaping radial engine and a landing gear that retracted awkwardly into its belly, the Japanese masters of the air could only laugh, mocking this Hellcat as nothing more than a slightly larger version of the F4F Wildcat they had already humiliated from Midway to Guadalcanal. They called it a fat cat, a lumbering target that surely lacked the grace and agility of the Zero. But what they didn't realize was that they were looking at a machine designed specifically to be their executioner, a plane born from the scorched wreckage of their own secrets and the vengeful ingenuity of American engineers. The mocking laughter in the ready rooms of Rabaul and Truk would soon be replaced by a chilling silence as the F6F Hellcat began to transform the Pacific sky into a sprawling, smoke-streaked graveyard for the pride of the Imperial Japanese Navy. The story of the Hellcat is not just one of mechanical superiority, but a tale of a dramatic shift in the tides of war, where a single engineering philosophy, the pursuit of ruggedness and raw power over delicate maneuverability, would systematically dismantle the air arm of an empire. To understand how this happened, we have to look back at the summer of 1942, when a lucky break on a desolate Aleutian island gave the Americans the blueprint for victory, a crashed Zero, largely intact, which revealed that the Japanese fighter's legendary agility came at the cost of zero armor plate and no self-sealing fuel tanks. Armed with this intelligence, Grumman's designers didn't try to build a more agile plane than the Zero. They built a predatory tank with wings, powered by the massive 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine, a power plant so hungry for air it could drag 6 half-inch machine guns and nearly a ton of protective plating through the sky at speeds the Zero could only dream of. When the Hellcat made its combat debut in September 1943, the Japanese pilots approached with their usual swagger, expecting to bait the Americans into the tight, vertical dogfights where the Zero reigned supreme, but they quickly discovered that the rules of engagement had changed overnight. The Hellcat pilots didn't play the Zero's game. Instead, they used their immense speed to dictate the fight, diving from high altitude with a scream of metal, raking the unarmored Japanese planes with a concentrated wall of lead, and then zooming back into the clouds before the nimble Zeros could even bring their cannons to bear. It was a massacre in slow motion, as the Fat Cat proved to be a resilient monster that could soak up dozens of hits from Japanese 7.7mm rounds and keep flying, while a single burst from a Hellcat would turn a Zero into a falling torch. The psychological impact was devastating. The Japanese aces who had spent years perfecting the art of the duel found themselves facing an enemy that refused to duel and instead chose to execute. As the conflict moved toward the Philippine Sea, the mocking turned to dread, and the Hellcat's kill-to-loss ratio began to climb toward an unprecedented 19-to-1, a statistic that essentially meant that for every American who didn't come home, nearly 20 Japanese aircraft were sent to the bottom of the ocean. This reached its bloody crescendo during the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, where the skies were so thick with the dark silhouettes of Hellcats and the blooming explosions of Japanese planes that the very sun seemed obscured by the debris of an air force being erased in a single afternoon. The Hellcat wasn't just a fighter, it was a factory-built solution to a national crisis, a plane that allowed even relatively green American pilots to face off against veteran Japanese commanders and win through sheer technological brutality. The cockpit of the Hellcat became a sanctuary of steel and glass, where young men from Iowa and New Jersey sat behind 2 inches of armored windshield, watching the legendary invincible Zeros disintegrate before their eyes. The Japanese pilots, who had once mocked the American design as ugly and clumsy, now found themselves trapped in a desperate struggle to even stay alive in the same airspace as the F6F, as the Hellcat expanded its reach from carrier decks to land bases, hunting them down in their own hangars and over their own home islands. The tragedy for the Japanese was that their culture of the perfect warrior prevented them from adapting their designs with the same speed as the Americans. They stayed with the Zero too long, while the Hellcat continued to evolve, eventually adding radar for night fighting and rockets for ground attack, becoming the ultimate multi-role predator of the era. By 1944, the Pacific sky was no longer a place of honorable combat. It was a killing field where the Hellcat stood as the Grim Reaper, accounting for 5,163 confirmed aerial victories, more than any other naval aircraft in history. The emotional weight of this transition was felt most keenly by the Japanese pilots who survived the early years, men who watched their students and friends vanish into the Pacific in planes that were increasingly outmatched and outgunned. They realized too late that the Americans hadn't built a plane to impress them. They had built a plane to kill them. The Hellcat's wings were broad enough to carry the weight of a nation's fury, and its 6 machine guns spoke with a finality that brooked no argument. As the war roared toward its conclusion, the sight of the Hellcat's distinctive blue-on-blue camouflage became a harbinger of doom for the remaining outposts of the Empire, a sign that the sky now belonged exclusively to the industrial might of the United States. Even the introduction of the lightning-fast Shiden-Kai and other late-war Japanese superplanes couldn't stem the tide, because by then, the Hellcat had already broken the back of the Japanese pilot corps, leaving only desperate kamikazes and untrained teenagers to face the most successful carrier-based fighter ever built. When we look back at the wreckage of the Pacific War, the Hellcat stands as a testament to the idea that mocking your enemy is a dangerous luxury, and that in the cold reality of aerial warfare, it isn't the most beautiful or the most agile plane that survives. It is the one that is built to endure, to protect its pilot, and to strike with the overwhelming force of a thunderbolt. The graveyard of the Pacific is paved with the remains of the aircraft that underestimated the F6F, a machine that turned ugly into unstoppable and fat into formidable. The laughter of the Imperial Navy died out long before the fires did, extinguished by a fighter that proved, once and for all, that the American Iron Works was the most lethal forge in history. Today, the few surviving Hellcats in museums around the world sit silently, their radio engines quiet and their guns empty. But if you look at their rugged lines and their sturdy frames, you can almost hear the echoes of the Pacific winds and the terrified shouts of the pilots who realized far too late that the Hellcat wasn't a joke, it was the end of their world. The story of the Hellcat reminds us that innovation is often born from humility, from the willingness to learn from your enemy's strengths and exploit their weaknesses with cold, calculated efficiency. It is a story of grit, of the pilots who pushed these machines to their limits, and of the engineers who gave them a fighting chance to come home. From the first mock encounters over the Solomon Islands to the final sweeps over Tokyo, the Hellcat transformed the Pacific from a theater of Japanese dominance into a showcase for American air power, leaving behind a legacy of victory that is written in the silence of the deep ocean and the hollowed halls of military history. Every time a Hellcat pilot pulled the trigger and felt the vibration of those 6.50 caliber guns, they weren't just firing at a plane. They were dismantling an ideology of invincibility that had once seemed unshakable. In the end, the Hellcat didn't just win a war, it redefined the very nature of what a fighter aircraft could be, proving that the ultimate weapon is the one that refuses to break, even when the world around it is falling apart. The mocking may have started the fight, but the Hellcat's roar finished it, carving a path of fire through the Pacific that led straight to the decks of the USS Missouri, and the final surrender of an empire that forgot to fear the Fat Cat.